So hello and good morning. Good morning to the European participants and good afternoon or good evening to the participants from Asia, from Japan or China. I welcome you very warmly to this data spaces dialogue. And as there are participants joining, I propose that we wait 2 or 3 more minutes until everyone had the chance to join. In the meantime, I can maybe chat a little bit and already introduce myself. My name is Thorsten Hülsmann. I'm one of the 2 managing directors of International Dataspaces Association, and am responsible especially for finance, legal, and international activities. And yes, it's an honor to moderate today this data space dialogue, which is, as you might know, already a very long tradition of IDSA. This data spaces dialogue was already established before Corona. I think in 2019 we had the first issue. And by the way, one of the 2 speakers of today was also present there. And with this, I think we can slowly start. And I want to welcome the 2 speakers. Reinhold Achatz is the chairman of IDSA. Hello, Reinhold. Nice that you made it and that you are with us today. And Jürgen Bretfeld, the CEO of Advaneo. Also a warm welcome from my side. And of course, a warm welcome to all participants. It's nice and very good that you are interested in today's dialogue. I see still participants joining, so I would say we give ourselves 1 or 2 more minutes that everyone has the possibility to join from the very beginning. Okay, so I will also slowly start with some technical information for all of you. One moment. So first of all, I want to inform everyone that this data space dialogue and the whole sequel of data space dialogues is powered by different research projects, which you can see here. I also want to mention that it is possible to ask questions. If you like to ask a question to the presenters or to the discussants, then please use the questions function in the panel on the right. I will observe the panel and bring your questions into the dialogue to answer the questions. Okay, so then I think we are good to go. I see that we are over 50 people who joined us today. Again, a warm welcome from my side. My name is Thorsten Hülsmann, and today we are talking about an initiative which is called the Green Deal Dataspace Association. It's a rather new data ecosystem initiative. New means 2 weeks old. And you see here that the founding ceremony of the Green Deal Dataspace Association took place at September 14. So really recently in Düsseldorf. And you see also here a picture of the founding partners which gathered together in Düsseldorf to kickstart this initiative. Among the founding members, there are these 7 organizations. We have a company from Finland, then several companies from Germany, the Hochschule Rhein-Waal with its sustainability unit, and we have from Spain the Innovalia Association. We have International Dataspaces Association itself among the founding members. And therefore, I think the whole initiative is really formally new, but already in the preparation mode since some months. And this is the reason why we decided to bring this initiative into this Dataspaces dialogue. Let me introduce or ask and give the floor to the two panelists today. And maybe Reinhold, to introduce yourself, maybe you could just share with the participants some words to yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thorsten. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm as well happy that I'm invited again after my first approach in the very first Dataspaces dialogue. Yeah, my name is Reinhold Achatz. I'm basically more than 40 years in industry, 32 years with Siemens, and 9 years with ThyssenKrupp. And in the meantime, I'm consulting quite a number of companies in different areas, not only in Dataspaces, but as well in quantum computing and as well in sustainability. And obviously, the combination of sustainability and Dataspaces is leading to the Green Dataspace. And for this reason, I'm very happy to be able to talk a little about Dataspaces, as well as basically about first use case we are proposing, just as an example. And with this, I think I hand over to Jürgen, because Jürgen, you are starting with the presentation, and maybe you start as well with your introduction.
Yeah, fine. Thank you, Reinhold. Yeah, welcome also from my side. My name is Jürgen Bretfeld. I'm the CEO of Atlaneo, a company based here in Germany, Düsseldorf. We are working in the field of IT infrastructure and in the main since 2016 as an early adopter of the international data space, also with the focus of ecosystems, data ecosystems, and how we can provide IT infrastructure solutions to make it happen, to share data in an easy way. Yeah, and so let's come to our topic of today. Let's start perhaps at first with an, let me say, content-related introduction. So as you know, data plays a central role in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But data only contributes to solving the global challenges of the future, and if it's easily and available and shared. And reliable and secure access to and handling of data is therefore central for the economic and the social future. And the Green Deal Dataspace initiatives and supports collaborations and database business innovations that serves to these goals. So far, the first, let me see, step into what we have created and started with last week, where we found the Green Deal Dataspace. But there's also, let me, a story before. So when we come later to what we have achieved with starting point of our founding, then we can say there was a story 1.5 years before when we started with a research project for resilience and crisis management. And we come to the point that it's very needed to build also a cross-domain approach for an open innovation field. We call it data space. So, and let me now briefly, really short, introduce to what we want to serve here with the data space. The Green Deal Dataspace creates an IT infrastructure and a data ecosystem in which data sharing projects can be developed and data can be exchanged and shared in a trustworthy and secure manner. When we come to the main points, then we can say it's based at the end of IDS and Gaia-X standards. It's open for all, and it's at the end non-profit. And the value creation takes place within the Green Deal Dataspace with the services which are in. So then the infrastructure only receives as many resources as it's needed to fulfill the central task of the ecosystem. And what is in? we as Atlaneo put some stacks we have created in the last years in, so that we can really start with, let me see, really running building blocks of this data space. I will mention some briefly. At first, it is a existing data marketplace with more than 2 million open data sets. Related to this data marketplace, we have added a tool where we can build open innovation via datatons, means virtual hackathons. And additionally, we also have integrated an AI workbench so that experts, data scientists can easily use the existing data within the Green Deal Dataspace and check and test how they can use the data. And not at least, we have built the opportunity also to build secure data sharing projects. So this means closed rooms for all which wants to build in a secure and closed manner ideas together and to put them in reality. So, and not at least, what we also have added is a Atlaneo solution, which is called Trusted Data Hub, where it's also possible to bring in sensitive data in a secure manner so that no one on the one hand can see this raw data, but it can be used and shared with the results of the analytics of this data. So far, this is, let me see there. We also have to now bring it in a, let me see, shape that the front end is also then in the manner of the design, which you now see here from the Green Deal Dataspace. But I think it's a good starting point from an initiative which is coming more from really the basics and coming from as a bottom-up initiative. We are not funded yet from anyone, so it's a starting point that there are willing partners to come together to work within these fields of resilience and sustainability. Therefore, I want to introduce in two cases we defined as starting lighthouse projects. I will short introduce in one, and after Reinhold will give a more detailed introduction in the second case for carbon footprint. So the first case I mentioned, it is the resilience case coming from our PAIRS project, where we defined or where we built with partners together, funded by the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs in Germany, a so-called supply chain radar. The main goal is to build up an early crisis detection system where warning coming from a lot of detected potential crisis triggering events on the one hand, and on the other hand, based on so-called bottlenecks of companies, a really customized matching of what is really relevant for this companies coming up from, at the end, potential crisis triggering events, which are related really to this bottlenecks. And based on this, to give up individual recommendations and also the opportunity to build up scenarios and to figure out what could be, what can we do at the end to really to go best case out of this upcoming crisis. This is the idea of this first, let me see, use case. It's more than a use case because we are just working on a really solution as a service at the end for, in the main, small and medium-sized companies, which are not really have the staff for such solutions for crisis management. And not at least now, the second, only short, briefly named here, the so-called carbon footprint case, where you get a deeper introduction later from Reinhold. So, and now, please, the last slide now. Or not the last, it's also a slide where also later a little bit deeper explained from Reinhold. Infrastructure, you see here, which we have defined concrete for this case, where you see also the building blocks of our data space in the main related to this case, where we can see that it's really built on the IDS reference architecture, where we also put in also infrastructure elements coming from the Gaia X initiative here in Europe, or we can also say now worldwide, because it's also growing beside of IDS, which is also now an international initiative. And now really to the last slide, please. Yes, become a member. As mentioned, it's an open initiative. We all have low fees, so it's for everyone possible to join this initiative. Give us a short call via a call or an email when you have questions. And yes, and now we'll come to Reinhold and give him now the opportunity to dive a little bit deeper in the main carbon footprint case we want to develop with all of you, because it's really needed that everyone who see it also as his case, he can join also this idea and initiative within this concrete lighthouse project of carbon footprint. So far from my side, and Reinhold,
thank you. No, Jürgen, stop. Moderator is first, of course. So thank you, Jürgen, for this introduction and also bringing us the Green Deal Dataspace closer. I want to interfere because we have already a couple of questions from the audience, and they are very much relating to your part, Jürgen. So and also maybe to a part which I can answer from the perspective of IDSA. So the first question is from Alexander Ziegelmeier, and he is asking, what is the relation between the Advaneo stack you just mentioned and the Green Deal Dataspace? And to be precise, is a subscription to the Advaneo database equal to the membership in the Green Deal Dataspace? Maybe you can comment on this shortly.
Yes, no, it's not. We are a member of the dataspace, of the Green Deal Dataspace. We provide some stacks within, but at the end, the Green Deal Dataspace is independent. It's open for all. We provide something within, and everyone also who has something to provide can do this within the Green Deal Dataspace. As mentioned, let me say the value creation takes place within the Green Deal Dataspace. The infrastructure as itself is only there to fulfill the central roles to build up the IT infrastructure and so on. So short, no, it's not the same, it's different. What we provide as Advaneo are also services like dataspace as a service, or some building blocks like data marketplace or the trusted data hub. These are independent solutions. We bring it in within the Green Deal Dataspace, but not more.
Okay, thank you for answering this. And then there's a second question, or basically two questions, which are going in the same direction, from Ton and from Wiedecke. And the question is about the relation between the Green Deal Dataspace coordination action, which is the GREAT project, and this initiative. And I take the advantage to being involved in this to answer this question on my own, if you allow, Reinhold and Jürgen. So as you know, the GREAT project is a coordination and support action, CSA, which is one of these short-term running projects to collect and to gather requirements from the Green Deal or sustainability industry, so to say, and then to bring them into the data spaces discussion to finally have requirements and prepare companies to work on data spaces which are working as enabler for services in this sustainability environment. And therefore, I think the relation is clear. This initiative, the Green Deal Dataspace Association, is a first operationalization from industry of the great project. And I would say it's a normal next step in the value chain. And I would interpret the connection in this way. Okay, and now having talked about these two topics which are in the question chat, I want to hand over to Reinhold. And Reinhold, we are happy that you share with us a potential use case, and the floor is yours. I will click to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thorsten and Jürgen. And I think it's very important that we mentioned it as well. It was not a question yet, but I think it's very important that we are open to any use case regarding in any way connected to Green Deal and to sustainability and resilience. I think we are introducing two use cases now as the first one we are working on. But as I said, open to everybody, ready to collaborate with everybody as well who is interested in the topic. I think it's very, very important that we are open globally. As we said, we are already international, so that's a very important topic. And I think now I would like to having said that, I would like to step a little more into governance and use case. And with the next slide, Thorsten, you will see something you've pretty much seen before, which is the generic structure of a data space. And I think just to describe very shortly as a repetition for most of you how a data space is looking like. Basically, to work in a data space, you need a connector. A connector is based on the standardized data space protocol. There are a number of different connectors available globally, and IDSA is working on the certification of those connectors that we really have interoperability. And then obviously to have a good understanding what is going on in the data space, you need a broker. Obviously we as well check the identity to create trust. We as well have basically a vocabulary, what we probably will work on as well. And on the other hand, there might be some ways of getting services and apps. But the most important thing are basically the members. And with this, we go to the next slide where we talk about the generic governance structure. So I think basically when we talk about the governance organization, this is now the Green Deal Dataspace Association. And obviously there will be hopefully quite a number of members. Those are the participants you see. And on the other hand, there will be a technical operator of the infrastructure, because we believe it's very important that our partners and members will be able to focus on their use cases, on the problem they want to solve, on their business. And for this reason, obviously, our ideas to provide an IDSA, a Gaia X compliant infrastructure. And our ideas as well, not to reinvent the wheel. We will build on existing structures and offer basically something which is already in the market, and not the key focus is not to develop the basis infrastructure. The key focus is definitely basically to develop use cases on an existing infrastructure. And what is a data space offering? This is basically the question I will answer in the next slide. Basically, yes, we see it is supports data ownership. This is the key mandate of the Internet Data Spaces Association. Then we basically, the offerings can be published by our partners. That means there's a catalog where you can basically find all the metadata of the applications, not the data itself, because we are very much working on a decentralized federated model. It means the data always stay with the participants and are only shared for a specific purpose under specific conditions, and basically the catalog allows you to publish it. The data space creates trust by design, which I think is very important for data sharing, because trust is the preconditions for most companies, or all companies, to share data. If you don't trust your partner, if you don't work in a trusted environment, you're not ready to share data. For this reason, we are creating the trusted environment by design. And I think to be able to operate, I think interoperability is key. For that reason, we are working on the standardization of the data space protocol, and as well on in the second step on syntax and semantics, because interoperability is a precondition for open data sharing without too many preconditions. And last but not least, and I think this is from my point of view, the key purpose, data spaces create opportunity for new businesses and new business models, because eventually, and I think Thorsten said this already, and Jürgen as well, we are aiming for really offering a platform for commercial purposes. So basically, and the idea is really that not the data space itself is making the money, but basically that all participants are able to develop their business model and basically offer services, use services, and get money out of it. And just to give you some examples how money is made in the data spaces, on one hand, you can sell data. This is obviously a very simple discussion, but most value is generated today through, while sharing data, through process optimization. On one hand, we offer a very efficient and standardized data exchange process. So this is process optimized, but what is even more important, the use case-based processes are optimized. And this is basically creating a huge amount of value for partners using data from an open community, basically to optimize their own business and business processes. But on the other hand, there's always a service opportunity. So every participant can offer services, and those are normally data sharing oriented services or and application-based services. So basically, obviously, there's a broad spectrum of new business models, and we are looking forward to your creativity and really to understand what kind of business models you wanna offer. And in the next slide, I basically would like to share some fundamentals on sustainability. I think there's obviously, we are referring to the United Nations sustainability goals, but on the other hand, I think it's very important that we remember the Paris Agreement from 2015, which proposes to strive for the 1.5 degree target. And you see the chart for the Science-Based Target Initiative, basically what paths are possible and what will happen if we are not following the 1.5 degree target. And unfortunately, basically, a lot of time has already passed since 2015, but we still believe, and many believe, that if we follow the blue curve, we will be able to keep the rising of the temperature to 1.5 degrees. And basically, this is, I think, a very important target we would like to support as well with the Green Deal Dataspace. Basically, so we are not protecting the environment, but we're offering tools and services and data to do so. And just an explanation how this is measured as the next slide. Basically, when we talk about emission and baselining of emission, we're talking about 3 scopes. There's always a scope 1, which is our own emissions, or the emission of your company or of the company working. There is a scope 2, the emission created by the energy you use. And then most of the time, the most important topic is the scope 3 emission. And there are 2 kinds of scope 3 emissions. One is the scope 3 upstream emission. Basically, this is the emission of all your suppliers. And then the scope 3 downstream emission, which is basically the emission created by your customer. And I think from my point of view, it is very important to understand that, because when we talk about really mitigating the risk of climate change, we are talking about really addressing all emissions, the full life cycle. So I think you basically can create wonderful numbers and wonderful charts if you only focus on one area, but the truth is only visible if you really focus on the full life cycle, and this is something I definitely would like to emphasize. To give you an example how it works for scope 1 and 2, we look at the next slide and basically see that basically the Paris Agreement proposes a step to 2030. And in this case, if you want to start it 2019 and would like to reach a target in 2030, you basically have to reduce your emissions of your own organization and the energy you're using by 46.2%. And this is basically based to achieve this blue curve I described earlier. And there are many things. Main focus obviously will always be the use of renewable energy. There will be as well the opportunity to create on-site own renewable energy. Energy efficiency will always be an opportunity, but as well optimizing processes. Then obviously as well electrification in case you're using always still coal or gas. natural gas, and last but not least, there will always be the opportunity to basic carbon capture and utilization. But there's one thing which you see is the yellow bar. The yellow bar means if you increase business, obviously you have to save more, because the target of the science-based target initiative in the Paris Agreement is an absolute goal. And world and life does not hopefully end in 2030, so we have to continue to carbon neutrality by 2050, and this is basically what Paris Agreement says and what we have in mind when we discuss carbon neutrality in scope 1 and 2. But now we are coming to the point where the data spaces come in, which is scope 3. And this is shown on the next slide. Basically, when we look at something, when you deliver a product as a company to a customer, basically, you always have to add up the emissions of your suppliers. You have to add up the emissions of your own and the emissions of the energy you're using. So this is the CO2 footprint, the CO2 content of your product. And to optimize this, you basically you have on one hand to track your own emissions, but on the other hand, you basically have to have a good understanding about the emissions of your suppliers. And in the next slide, we see how it works today. It's basically, and you can see your own company or your own endeavor in the middle. You basically have to communicate on one hand to your suppliers. And today, and this is really the case, we are sending emails, we are making phone calls, team sessions, and you name it, with many suppliers to get the data, because there is no standardized way of data exchange. And most companies have many suppliers, and the number of 10,000 partners and suppliers is not unusual. And by the way, the same happens because hopefully you have customers, and your customers want to understand your footprint as well. So you basically the same things, the same dialogue is happening with your customer. There is individual data exchange between you and your customer. And this is now exactly what the topic we want to address. I talked about optimizing processes earlier. We're in a data space, and we still keep the structure of the data space. You can view yourself being in the middle and having all your partners around you, having all your suppliers around you, and having all your customers around you. And basically, when you basically want to optimize a process, you use a data space protocol on one hand, but on the other hand, and this is basically the use case now, we are trying to define a standardized data exchange set of data to your suppliers and to your customers, which probably will be used, will be designed of the environmental definitions, basically the EPD, the environmental product definition. So you're basically data definition, you basically will standardize exactly this data exchange. And when it's standardized, it can be automated because we're working with an automated data space protocol. And if you automate the content, you will as well, and standardize the content, you will as well be able to automate the data exchange. And this means a huge saving in cost, in process cost, and a huge speed up, and a huge adding value in preciseness of the activity. Yeah, and with the last two slides, I want to summarize. Basically, yes, we want to leverage the value created by sustainability. That means we want to meet all reporting requirements, because obviously there all will be and is already established a legal framework in many countries in the world. We would like to leverage the value of sustainability, because low carbon has a value, so there might be a carbon price. We want to allow customers and support customers in creating and defending market share, where we would help customers to partners that they increase their customer loyalty. And obviously, specifically in the European Union, we have the carbon border adjustment mechanism. It's basically a carbon border tax. And if you are able to reduce your carbon footprint of your product, you basically can reduce or avoid this carbon border tax. So basically, you can see there are not only visual ethical reasons to mitigate the risk of climate change. There are very clear business reasons to do so. And this is exactly supported by the use case I just described. And in my last slide, I want to remind you on the general benefits as a chairman of the board of the International Data Spaces Association. Yes, we generate business value and it described exactly one way, or a number of ways of using that. We are open and vendor neutral, which is very important. And Jürgen emphasized this as well, that our Green Deal Dataspace will follow that paradigm as well. Open to everybody and vendor neutral. And everybody can participate, offer service and use a service, and share data and use data. This means there's equal opportunities for all partners. Obviously, interoperability and trust are the three preconditions. And the idea is really, with economy of scale, to have low or no transaction costs. Data ownership is reported, and as I said earlier, the key element of the data space is as well that you create the opportunity for economy of scale. And this is something which really makes the thing really efficient. And every new member will immediately be able to use the benefit of the data space. But with every new member, the value for the other members is increased as well. So this is the paradigm economy of scale. And this is exactly what we are supporting in International Data Spaces Association, but as well in the Green Deal Dataspace Association. And with this, I think I'm done with my part in my presentation. I thank you very much for the attention and for listening. And I think Thorsten and Jürgen, we still have time for questions, for discussion. And this is exactly what I'm proposing now. And just with this, back to you, Thorsten.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Reinhold, for this insight input. And I think clearly it became visible that you have a lot of experience from industry. And this is exactly what is necessary, that the perspective from industry is brought in this discussion as well. So we already have a couple of questions, and I want to, or I try to, to mention them all. First of all, there's a question again on the European Commission's Common European Data Spaces activities from Thorsten Reitz. Yes, Thorsten, you are right that there is, of course, because the same terminology is used, a lot of confusion. Maybe it is possible to overcome this confusion if we imagine what is the focus. And of course, Common European Data Spaces is a concept, and there are certain support mechanisms of the European Commission put in place. As mentioned, the GREAT project at the CSA, but also the related Data Space Support Center. And these are all mechanisms to motivate and to bring industries or companies and organizations in place to work with data spaces, either to put their own data spaces in place or to join forces in an initiative. Could be a non-profit initiative like we have it here, an association, but it could also be simply a commercial joint venture or a data ecosystem which is driven by the market. So I think the question is right, but we can easily sort it out by focusing. And I would say the just mentioned projects, the GREAT project as a CSA, the Data Space Support Center are building the frame, and the European Commission is of course not in the position to build own data spaces. They are just motivating and framing, giving ideas and support for organizations to do this in the market. So then there's a second question.
Maybe Thorsten will add to something, and I think what is very important to understand is that there will not only be one data space in the world. I think I remember in the first communication, the European Commission proposed 9 data spaces, but I personally believe that as the paradigm in the meantime is already very successful, and we have roughly 100 use cases already in our data space radar, there will be, from my point of view, eventually thousands of data spaces. But the key element is interoperability of those data spaces and basically standardization of the protocol. And this exactly supported by the European Union and by many other organizations. But we should not be confused. There are basically organizations which allow us really to build a standard like IDSA, or to offer basically boundary conditions like GAIA-X, and others. But basically the data spaces are those which really create value. And I think with this, with our Green Deal data space, we really implement a real data space where real value, real business can be made, real value can be generated. And this, I think, the differentiation. So defining the idea is one thing, implementing it is the other thing. And to be honest, I always want to be on the implementation side, because here the money is made.
Very good. Thank you, Reinhold, for this addition. Then I want to pick two more questions from Alexander Ziegelmeier. And the first one focuses on the question, who is the federator of the Green Deal Dataspace? And maybe, Jürgen, you could elaborate on this a little bit. The question is, which organization is the federator of the entire Green Deal Dataspace in our case? Can you maybe share some ideas and some information about this?
As I mentioned, that the starting points is 1.5 years before. Now we just funded the association, so we take as Atbaneo the role to build the first ideas to federate this what we have in the Green Deal Dataspace. But at the end, the main goal is to bring, Reinhold mentioned it, that we don't want to reveal, to invent a new wheel. We want to bring really what is there to the Green Deal Dataspace. At first, what is open source there. So far, this is what coming from IDSA, coming from initiatives, coming from Gaia X, we want to put together and put on top of this at the end really services, which could be also on the application layer, but could also be from the infrastructure layer, added services, which could be also commercial driven. So, and when I go to now our Green Deal Dataspace, or you go to our Green Deal Dataspace webpage, you will see that what services are in. You can see that.
May I interrupt you? May I interrupt you? I want to help Alexander by being really crystal clear. The question is, which organization is the federator? Just one name. The Green Deal Dataspace Association is the federator.
Yeah, at the end, the Green Deal Dataspace Association.
Perfect.
Yes.
Very good, very good. I think this was the question, and I just wanted to be precise. And I was a little bit taking the perspective of Alexander because he cannot speak up. So yeah, and because the second question, this is more the question which you already started to answer, and I want simply to read this. So are there also other service providers in the data space beside Atbaneo? And this is exactly what you just started to answer. Therefore, sorry that I was a little bit picky and harsh to interrupt you. But now you can go further with focusing on the services.
It's your role. So yes, what services are just in? We started, as mentioned, before we found the association, with services coming from all this, let me see, parties which really are on this data space. At first, we come from the research projects. I mentioned it, the supply chain radar is coming from a funded research project here in Germany. Pairs, but beside there are also other research projects mentioned as SPEL, also a research project coming from the crisis management field, which are going more in the field of operational crisis management, so-called, let me say, partner project of pairs. Then there are also some solutions in this service catalog here coming from also partners coming from the pairs project. Here mentioned is to build a really stable situation in the hospitals. This is coming from a partner in the main Tiplo, coming from Berlin here in Germany. Then from the energy field, also how we can really make our energy infrastructure resilient. These are coming from partners like Research Institute here in the north of Germany office, and also other partners, open source partners related to them. And there is also a partner coming from the field of risk and insurance, Funk, which also have some tools coming from the risk field, how you can measure the risk within your supply chain, and so on. These are just solutions which are in, and we also invited other research institutions and programs like Heraklon, coming also from the field of resilience to measure in the public field the opportunity to give the states also and the countries the opportunity to measure their readiness for resilience. And this is the main topic of this research project. So this is in. But at the end, we have to make it more public now here, and our event here is coming from this motivation to make this public so that we get more in. Everything is related in these fields of resilience and sustainability. We offer something, Reinhold, in the main here with this common footprint approach and idea. The others I mentioned with our supply chain radar, but when you have other ideas and you're really willing to pay for this then it makes sense to discuss to bring it also on the stage here of the Green Deal Dataspace. What I
Thank you,
want...
I think this
we
is
have
a very,
short. There are many questions, so be short, please.
Yeah, but this is, I think, what Jürgen said is really great, because he described what is already in the making. But I think what is even more important, what's not yet in the making from my point of view, because this call is as well, to be honest, the call for new partners to offer new services. And really, having worked in industry for more than 40 years, I'm basically very interested as well to see use cases introducing new business models. So basically, our platform, or the platform of the Green Deal Dataspace, from my point of view, on one hand will allow the sharing of research-oriented data, but even more important that we win partners and win new offerings and new services based on industrial purpose. And as I said, the key element for me is really offering a platform to create new business models and to make money. And the idea is anybody who joins will be able to make money with it. And this, from my point of view, this everybody's equal, everybody can do something. And I'm extremely happy that we have Jürgen on board, which basically brings already some of the use cases, but we're looking forward to many more.
Very good. Thank you, Reinhold, for this statement. And I want to pick now a couple of more questions, as we have some more minutes to go. So the first one from Luciano Riccio about trust and ownership. So the question is precisely, is it possible to have an example of how add ownership information to a data set? And Reinhold, I think this could also be a topic which you can easily answer.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think from my point of view, as I said in my statement, trust and ownership are the key elements. And I think trust is generated basically, and or sometimes say it may be a little overstated, but we are creating the better internet because we want to know who is in the data space, and we allow basically all our participants to know who is in the data space in terms of with whom you are sharing data. So basically we check identity. That means you always know with whom you're dealing with, and this is really a key element of creating trust. The other one is basically data ownership, and there are two elements which ensure data ownership. One element is basically the data always stay with you as long as you don't share it. So basically, and if you share it, you basically can add, I always call it a contract to your data, and in this contract you describe what is basically the condition under which you are sharing those data. So those are the usage conditions for the data. And this is what means really you can describe basically how long those data are valid. That means we have a digital rubber implemented. But on the other hand, what is the price for the data? And what might be the benefit you would like to get out of it? And what is basically the use case if you want to be set precise and go down to that where this data can be used? So you basically with these usage conditions, and we are still developing the standardization of those use decisions in the IDSA and with other partners, and we obviously will apply it here in the Green Deal Dataspace as well, that we basically can describe what the receiving partner is allowed to do with the data. And this is basically ensuring data ownership. and you always stay in charge of your own data, and you will always own your own data, and you only share it for certain purposes and for certain usage conditions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Reinhold, for this clear statement. Then I'm looking to the questions. So there is Gerard from iShare mentioning that there's also an activity which is facilitated by the Dutch government, who just recently launched their activity. So please have a look. And I think Andreas Kembügler, if you would be so nice to share the link of Gerard to the public here in this call, then people can also investigate and browse a little bit on this input. Then there are several questions from Thorsten Reitz and also some co-comments, but I try to summarize and ask the question. I don't know who can answer on this, Jürgen or Reinhold. It's about the long-term goal for the association. So the question is, if someone of us could maybe describe a little bit the long-term goal. It was a little bit in the answers of both of you, but maybe someone of you would just speak up and maybe share a vision, if this is possible at all after 2 weeks of existence.
Yeah, no, I think obviously databases have a very clear vision, if I may start. And basically the idea is really to create economy of scale, as I said earlier. And economy of scale means we win as many partners as possible, because the more partners we have and use cases we have in a data space, obviously the more value is created. And I think the data space is basically a federated structure, as I showed we showed in our slides. But as I showed in my slide as well, yourself can view yourself being in the center of your own basically structure, because the federated structure allows you to talk to everybody in the same way, on a standardized way. And this is as well, by the way, when we talk about the iShare initiative, we would like to invite the iShare initiative in Netherlands, which is very much focused on the CO2 footprint of buildings, which is, I think, from my point of view, a super use case as well, a great use case as well for a Green Deal Dataspace, and they call it the same way. And I think we're really looking forward as a corporation, how we can really cooperate and integrate the data available in basically the Netherlands use case, and maybe even extend this Netherlands use case to the rest of Europe or even to the rest of the world, because buildings are a key contributor to the emission of the world. And if we were able to track building emissions, and it's always tracking and building a baseline is always a start for improvement, for optimization. For that reason, we're really looking forward to the cooperation there. And as I said, as they say, they work on IDSA basis as well. So from my point of view, there should be no big deal to start cooperation and intensify our cooperation. And as I said, and the vision is really to invite all those kinds of initiatives, existing or new, to join and to participate and to make more local oriented topics global or international. This is basically my vision. So there's no limit, and the scalability, I think this is basically, again, I said a little, we want to be the better internet. So we want to create a trusted, safe environment for sharing data, which is scalable, so no limits. And maybe Jürgen, you want to add, or you're already happy?
Only short. The big idea behind data spaces is that we are creating an infrastructure that is more than a classical platform. No? So there is a hashtag I know from IDSA coming means sharing is better to make it alone. So at the end, sharing data here in our sense for really this sustainable development goals. We come together. It's no one can do it alone. We have to do it together, and then in a way that data are really available, and everyone can bring in his ideas, and this in a way that at the end we really produce outcomes. I don't want to have a, let me say, discussion forum where we share slides. I want to share data where we really bring something which really helps to build a better future. And this is the idea. And so far, let's do it together. Alone, no one can do this.
Perfect. Thank you, Jürgen, for this statement. Then we have a lot of questions, so we won't cover them all. But I want to rephrase the questions of Florian Jasche, because he's asking which topic specifically the Green Deal Dataspace Association is focusing on, and it was already answered indirectly by the statements. Yeah, so I would say a lot could be covered if there's a need for market and if there are members who are bringing in services. So this is maybe the right answer to Florian's questions. The more specific topics about vocabularies and so on, Florian, sorry, I think we cannot discuss it right here, but please reach out to Jürgen. He's the expert, and then we can answer this question. We have also two more questions. One is from Marta. She's asking, how are you sustaining this activity as there are no fundings? Are you planning to cover all costs from association fees? I think this was also already a little bit answered by Reinhold when referring to the services. Reinhold, do you want to add shortly on it, how the financial sustainability of the association will take place?
Yes, thank you very much. Sustainability always has two meanings. One is the environmental sustainability, but the other one is the financial sustainability. And obviously, we are now not even 2 weeks old, basically, as a data space. But you need an organization to apply for funding. And this is exactly what we now are working on. That basically, as we are working in the context of basically all the European charters of Green Deal. And on the other hand, we are working in the context as well defined by Manufacturing X in Germany, for example, and other charters defined by other countries. So we are very interested as well to really get funding in from different partners. And obviously, we would like to allow business partners to create benefits and value for themselves, to make money on this own. So basically, those might be the sources of funding. But the first step is really establish a data space and then go for funding. And this is exactly the step we are doing now. And hopefully as well, when we have millions of members, even a very small membership fee will allow funding without any problem.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Reinhold, for this information. And then we have two more questions. And due to time reasons, we have only 2 minutes left. I try to sketch and answer them on my own. So the question from Takako Nagushi is, he's not so clear about the relation of the Green Deal Dataspace Association, the PAIRS project, and IDSA. So let me briefly repeat what I think Reinhold also said. IDSA is an international standardization organization. PAIRS is a research project which elaborated on a use case and a little bit the framework for this Green Deal data space. And then the Green Deal Dataspace Association is an implementation. We are talking really about an implementing initiative. And Takako, if you have more, if you want to talk and discuss more about it, please reach out to us or to one of us. I think Reinhold is perfectly fine to discuss with you. I'm also here, and Jürgen as well. And then the last question from Leah Schick, if we have anywhere information about the government's framework. So Leah, for your information, the association was established 2 weeks ago. Via the link which Jürgen has shared in his presentation and is also available in the chat, you can reach the statutes of the association. And in the statutes, the governments and the framework of the association, the formal ones, are described. And then if you join, of course, we can create jointly together the maybe technical governments, or however you want to describe it. I think now we don't have time to make a deep dive in it. All right, so 1 minute to go. My communication team said to me, I have to point to a couple more information, but first of all, I want to thank you very much, you Reinhold and you Jürgen, for your very, very knowledgeable input. I think it was a very intensive and very good discussion and presentation. I also want to thank the participants and the very active people who asked questions. Sorry if we could not deep dive into the one or the other question. The dialogue here is more a dialogue between the panelists, but of course your input was very valuable, and please feel free to reach out of us if your questions have not been answered in the right way. I want to point to two more things. IDSA working group meetings will take place at September 26 and 27. Please go to our homepage if you are interested. The working group certification and the working group architecture will meet in person in Düsseldorf, but also virtual participation is possible. And there's also a community meeting in Düsseldorf in the conference center at the airport. So if you're interested to join either virtually or physically, go to the homepage of IDSA and participate. And then I want to also point to one more event. It's at September 28 within the framework of the Digitale Woche here in Dortmund, Germany. There's a data sharing forum exploring data sharing and sovereignty in education and urban mobility. And we have some very interesting speakers from the BRIC countries. So there are speakers from Brazil, there are speakers from India and from Germany. And I think it's a quite interesting perspective also from the BRIC countries in this data sharing forum at September 28. That's all from my side. Thank you very much again, Reinhold. Thank you very much, Jürgen. We are ready. And again, thank you to the audience.
Thank you, Thorsten. I think great moderation. Thank you, Jürgen, for participating. And I think I would like to remind, this is an open invitation to everybody. You're very welcome. Your input, and obviously, if you really want to actively participate, please join our organization. And we promise you there will be a lot of good opportunity for active participation and eventually for making money.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and have a great afternoon or remaining working day wherever you are located. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.